Hi, good afternoon. Jesus, all greasy, hey. Oki, Nixikoa, Nistuni Danaku, Makoyo Sakoyi. I just greet you with, that's my second Blackfoot name. Means, Milky Way or Wolf's Trail or Medicine Trail. My brother, my dear brother, Robert Johnston, was scheduled to get on. He will come on another time. But I just wanted to visit with you during this power hour. And our topic is around just self-care and our next generation and what kind of legacy we're creating during this time. So I want to visit with you. So this is like your auntie. Your auntie is going to be visiting with you during this power hour. I'd like to, I see, hey, Michaela. All right. And Jean, Darlene Franco. Hey, Darlene, look at my, not today, colonizer. A lot of our friend made these t-shirts and she sent this one to me in the mail and I just decided to wear it today. I'd like to, let's start with really practicing a stay at home, and when we go out, really loving our neighbors and being mindful about social distancing. One of the things that we've seen across the tribes is, man, they're doing good things to protect the elders. And so I'm going to say something about each generation. In our area, we've got 1.5 million acres here, but they've really, our elders get to shop at 7 a.m. every Tuesday for a whole hour, and they're not rushed. They give them extra gloves. There's masks. They bring their groceries out. They never lift anything heavy. They bring their groceries out to the vehicle. They just go out of their way to make sure that they can get their essentials. And then, it allows, everyone can shop the other times. But I just want to say, so like the self-care around that. One of, when I was in there, and going when because I'm an elder, I'm 64, eh? Hey, pretty good for 64. That's what wellness and sobriety does. You don't look all old and no, just kidding. When I'm in there, I noticed today, everybody, will say, okay, they'll talk in the language, or they'll say good afternoon, and they'll stop. There's actually conversation. It isn't just like passing each other by. It's kind of like a sacred time. The other is, I notice, and I just want to, a shout out. I notice that all of our young people, and, young 30 and under, are really going out of their way to take care of their elders during this time. Even, doing the shopping for them, checking on them. But, so in this taking care of elders, and this is the little tip, and it's a tip because, we want in the next year or so, we're all going to have to go online, whether it's FaceTime, get your own Facebook, get on Instagram, or even tweet away, get into the political arena. I'd like to ask everyone to think about teaching your elders technology with compassion. And what I mean by that, sometimes, when how elders are, they'll watch you, how you behave, and they'll know that maybe you aren't making a good choice, but they won't interfere. They won't interfere unless you ask them. They'll just watch you. And then, when you do ask for help, then, that's when the conversation and the teachings can start, when you ask for help. So we have to teach our elders how to ask for help with getting on technology, because I noticed one thing, just with even all of the elders that I am teaching to get online, and then just my own learning curve, is sometimes, our younger people. Okay, so this is not the healthy way to do it. is, okay, just get on there, click there, okay, over there, just move this, okay, cut and paste that, okay, do that. When you talk like that to an elder with technology, that's abusive because they don't understand a dang thing you're saying. And so I really would encourage you to start like this. Find out what the elder is interested in. Find out, what floats their boat and what kinds of things that they really enjoy. And so, for example, and I'll use my sister-in-law. We're both the same age. She never got on a computer till about 7 years ago. She lived on this reservation all her life, and she had no need to get on a computer. But she's an incredible, intelligent, magic kind of woman. She, can fix anything in the house. And so the way she started her genius about technology is she found out that you could get on YouTube and Google how to fix the plumbing. Google how to sew this. And now I just want to a shout out to her because she's a stay-at-home teacher. She's got a teacher status because through the computer, through researching genealogy, she has learned to access all the programs. And so she's teaching math to her 4-year-old who is excelling. And then she's teaching all of the school curriculum with her 6-year-old. So that's we're the same age. And she got on and she saw the amazing horizons that you can find in technology, and that's a positive example. So the other thing I wanted to speak about today, and I guess Robert Johnston is my brother for so many years, and what I've seen Robert do with young men, and maybe that's the topic that I'd like to speak about now, is rites of passage. And I just seen, like with Robert and his young men, him teaching them discipline, discipline of the sport of basketball, discipline of taking care of your body, discipline of research. Robert even took his team to Australia. I just look at all the rites of passage. So let's begin with rites of passage 101. In a lot of our tribes throughout the nations and all of our indigenous people across the world, a rite of passage, the first rite of passage, is often to get your Indian name. So let's just start there. There's many rites of passage, from the time they say from birth to the grave. They're all spiritual. Rites of passage are spiritual markers, and they denote spiritual progress. But the one, if you get it at birth, because a lot of the getting a name sometimes with some tribes is thought about, and they actually give it at birth. They may be getting the name from an ancestor. They may be getting the name from a dream. Or the family may have had a discussion and just decides that this little boy or this little girl needs like the special spirit of an animal. Like in some tribes, they might name you after a loon. They might name you after a sparrow. They might name you after a red-tailed hawk. It might be they want to give you the spirit of that animal to take care of you, so they give you that Indian name. So let's just kind of just some protocols, because often in this rite of passage, I'll hear people say, I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to do something wrong. And so you'll never do anything wrong. That's actually a colonized thinking that something's right or wrong. That came from the Europeans. So when you're doing this rite of passage, you're doing nothing wrong. So sometimes, get some tobacco, or get a blanket. In the old days that have horses, you might even, what would be a really good gift? iPhones are going on sale. Like they're cheap now. You could get an elder an iPhone, and whatever gift you're giving them, but give them a gift and plan to spend some time when you give them this gift. And you sit with them. So that means sometimes sitting with the elder might be 6-7 sessions of an hour or so, or 2 hours, and give them this gift. And and a lot of elders, like I get just tobacco, and once you get that tobacco, it's a spiritual bond. There's a treaty made between Estebatapio, that the creator, or whatever you call God, that elder, and that tobacco, that sacred tobacco binds you. When you give them tobacco, you're asking a serious question. And if that question is just, please tell me how I get an Indian name, that's a serious question. But once you give that tobacco, that's the magical bond of this treaty by which some knowledge is going to be transferred. And just sit with them, because they're gonna ask you questions. They're gonna talk to you. With this pandemic, once you make that bond, I'll just give you an example. It was a couple years ago. My mother was asked with some tobacco to give a name to, we call them the Three Redheads, because in our tribe we have a variety of colors, and we love them all. So they're the Three Redheads, and it's been a couple of years, and all of the research was done about their ancestors' Indian names on both sides, because both the parents are enrolled Blackfeet. And a lot of research was done about their character. And my mother even dreamt about them. And she asked Marvin Weatherwax Sr. And Marvin is... we only have 8 war bundles, and there's 3 left, and Marvin is the keeper of one of those war bundles. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Long story there. But they went through this dialogue because one of the names was it was an old name, and they wanted to make sure that all protocol was followed. So they did all of this. And, in the first, there was a snowstorm one time when the ceremony, there was always something that came up. And the naming was supposed to happen March 18th. And our tribe, luckily, went to lockdown March 15th. And they couldn't gather to do this naming, but because they had done all the protocol those 2 years, finding out what ancestor names needed to be carried on, finding out personality, seeing if there was a dream about the name, putting out their tobacco, asking, all of that had been carried on. Marvin finally and my mom had a discussion, and he goes, well, we've done all of that, just do it over the phone. So she actually bestowed in the name giving, because all the preparation had been done, and gave them their Indian names over the phone. So in this rite of passage of getting a name, once you have that name, I'd like to talk about a gift in once you do have your name. Okay, so once you, I have my first Nistu Nidaniko Mokoyo Sakoi now. But once you have that Indian name, if one of the beauties of it is you can use it to ground yourself. You can use it to center yourself. You can use it to calm yourself. And you can use it to gather your thoughts. The way that that's done is like if you feel out of sorts, And it's a prayer. It's asking the spirits, it's asking your ancestors. If you're ever feeling out of sorts, and some of us might feel out of sorts during this pandemic and during this time, is you simply just call yourself. And you can start in the east, call yourself, face the four directions, and call yourself, Buksaput Makoyo Sakoyi. Buksaput Makoyo Sakoyi. Buksaput Makoyo Sakoyi. Buksaput Makoyo Sakoyi. Sometimes you call your spirit loud. And when you do that, an amazing thing happens. It's like all your ancestors that died for you, that prayed for you. When you call your Indian name 4 times in the 4 directions, they come into you and they ground you and they give you so much strength. You have no doubt. You don't have no worry, and you're like right on target with making good decisions. It makes me cry. I cry a lot because I like to heal, and I was just realizing how important that Indian name is, because I'm new in my second name, and I was told that I've only had it 2.5 years, and I was told that I'll be transforming into that name. So these rites of passage, like when you get your Indian name, you got to give yourself time, and time might be years to transform into that Indian name. So if it's like sometimes let's see. Bear Top Knot was one of my, about 4 generations back. And if you're finding out what's the spirit of that name, just think something must have happened. And this, so we're talking 1700s, 1800s. Something happened where that, usually it's like a coup story or something, the essence, whatever. Say it is the power of that kyayo or that baksikwe, that grizzly bear, that whatever your name is, it comes into you. And sometimes it feels like it's in your gut, that it gives you strength. And there's a lot of reasons, during this this challenge and this gift of this pandemic and this virus, this invisible enemy that we have, that we need to ground ourselves and to center ourselves with our strength. So that Indian name, getting your Indian name or your spirit name, and think of it in a different way. Our friends, Native Wellness Institute, we've been going to Australia for a good 10 years, because we started out helping them with their methamphetamine, which they call ice, their difficulties. But when we got there, this is another indigenous, so just the same spiritual context. When we started going there, the first question that a lot of the Aboriginal people that we would meet, and they never saw real Indians, ooh, no, hello feather. Anyway, but the first question they would say, "What's your totem?" And so we had to learn how spiritual and important that was. And what we learned is all the animals in Australia, whether it was the emu, whether it was the snake, whether it was the kangaroo, whether it was the dingo dog, whatever the spirit was, the Aboriginal people, when you say your totem was the kangaroo, then you had a treaty with that kangaroo. You had a treaty, you had an obligation. So one of the things you couldn't eat your brother, so you wouldn't be able to eat kangaroos anymore. And kangaroo is delicious, man. The stew is good. Steve Hearn made anyway. But just think about how the first thing here, where indigenous is meeting indigenous. And they don't care what degrees you have. They don't care about all that. Their first question to us was, what is your totem? And then we realized they were just asking us what our Indian name was, what Indian name we were given. And I just say this because we work in trauma and suicide prevention. And often I'll just say this is, when they're cutting a kid down after he's hung himself. And then the healing begins. Sometimes we'll ask, well, what was their Indian name? And they'll say they didn't have one. Having your Indian name is such profound, big spiritual protection, and I'm just saying that during this time. So one of the things, during this power hour, and as we're visiting with each other, think about in your family who you have to give Indian names to, and how you want to celebrate that, and how you want to gift give for it. So I'm going to say that much. I was thinking about other rites of passage. Often we know rites of passage when we turn from a girl into a woman, and we know rites of passage when we turn from a man, from a little boy into a man. But there's other rites of passage, and you're going through a rite of passage right now. You are going to be a survivor and a thriver of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this rite of passage is, we're relearning. There's a reset button. There's a refresher. Or if you're like me, we're going through a transformation. I was just talking with some other elders. It's weird how some things have lost meaning. I mean, and a lot of the like things that are re-meaning things. It's just it might sound funny, but it's like money or those kinds of things don't have meaning. They aren't what it's about. What has meaning is the love of our family. What has meaning is the love of our health. What has meaning is just the love of love. If you might be re-falling in love with your partner you've lived with for years. You might be, we always joke about, there'll be a lot of divorces. I don't think so. I think that people are going to re-fall in love with each other if it's romantic. I think that people are going to re-fall in love with their children. Look how hard our parents are trying so hard to homeschool. They're falling in love with their children again. And guess what? Their children are loving it. Their children are loving their parents spending all that time. I remember reading a statistic early in my career that the average parent spent 11 and a half minutes with their teenager. And usually that was correcting them. And we have this opportunity where we're spending time with each other. So think about those rites of passage, not only in all of the transformations in our life. So one of the ones, let's talk about rites of passage and courtship. There's a man named Herb Welch on the Wind River Reservation, and he does many things, but he makes flutes. And I heard him speak, and I heard others, like Gene Tagabon speaks about it. With Casey Nicholson, And Pat Armstrong Jr. On our reservation. There's just many, famous Robert Nakai, those kind of. We have all of these flute players, and so let's just take that for an example. A rite of passage of courtship. When you're courting someone, and you are going through, because sometimes courtship, if you had, and so rethink it rather than just snagging. Okay, just snagging. Think about courtship, and so one of the things with flute music, often, and what comes to mind is Clayton Small, Jerry Small, Teresa Small, all of the Northern Cheyenne. I always see this ledger artwork where, the girl and the young man that was courting her, he would often play flute music, outside her teepee or her condo or her FEMA trailer. Up here outside the FEMA trailer, would court her, where it was just playing songs. It was just, love flute songs. But think about, how do you translate that today? What you could sing for her. You could write her poetry. You could write her love letters. You could talk to her. And so, anyway, I was thinking about those flutes and how that rite of passage, and that same scenario when you had the young man and the young girl, and today we have all kinds of genders. We have same genders marrying, and that's beautiful. So whoever is courting each other, they would be walking, and not too far behind them, horseback, would be one of the older people in the tribe, watching them as they were watching the courtship. So allow someone to watch your courtship. In the courtship, sometimes with in this rite of passage, especially if you're from different tribes, you should always go, and the person that you're courting or being courted by, you should always go and see where their territory is, what their land is about, what their traditions are. And they said often it was, you would go and live 4 seasons in their land, and then they would come and live 4 seasons in your land, because each season has its own personality and its own kind of spirit. And then you see if you're compatible. See, that's a lot different than just snagging, right? I was just laughing because when I saw this this visual, it says, "Hi, Grandpa, how come I'm so light complected?" And Grandpa says to the grandson, just be quiet. Your mom snagged the swan man." I mean, we're so crazy about some of, snagging. Of course, it's just the humor. So that rite of passage, that's something else. And let's see, what other, there's so many rites of passage going on right now. Like in these last few minutes we have, let's talk about the rite of passage of graduating. I'm just seeing so many humongous, fabulous, just magnificent things that high schools are doing and that colleges are doing. So I just like to send out, just some words of encouragement about the rite of passage. When you graduate from high school, that's a big deal. In my younger years, from our generation, there was very few people who graduated from high school. And now we have that. And now with our 38 tribal colleges and with all of we now have, it's normal to have your master's degree, and it's becoming normal to have all of our young 20-year-olds that have their PhD. But each of those rites of passage, because number one, that says that you're bicultural. when you can beat that European at his own game and get that PhD and still maintain your Indianness and still maintain your know who you are and who your ancestors are and have your Indian name, you are like a bicultural warrior. So when you graduate from high school, it's like a coup story. And so this rite of passage, I mean, I was just thinking, I look at all the, they're putting the pictures of all the seniors. We have 160 some seniors, and on our reservation, and that is, God, it makes me want to cry because before we'd have freshmen start and none of them would graduate. We have so much to celebrate, So we have, you do stuff on Facebook. Man, when I open it up and I see pictures of our seniors, when they were babies, how they grew up, and then what scholarships they got, what college they're going to, the most exciting thing is, they'll say, hey, do you know so and so got a full ride? We're like, yay, yay, yeah, got a full ride. Oh my God, think about that rite of passage, whether it's high school or whether it's college, whatever the degrees. I mean, even to finish a course. If you finish a course during this pandemic, you have a coup story. If you turn in that homework and it's online and you get a good grade and you pass, you should say, you should celebrate because you did it during a pandemic and you didn't let anything stop you. You didn't let anything deter you. You stayed focused. So let's just think about, in the remaining time that we have together, how you're going to celebrate the rites of passage with your children and with yourself now, because there may be some new rites of passage, and we don't know what they are right now. I was just looking at the amazing thing that people are doing with this time at home. For some of us it might be 60 days, some it might be 50 days, where you only come in contact with one or two or three or four people. And so be thinking about what rites of passage do you need to celebrate with yourself? What rites of passage do you need to celebrate with your partner, your life partner, or even, the rite of passage of having forgiveness with your exes? That's a rite of passage when you can not be with someone anymore, but you have all the forgiveness in the world and you still have a love for them. That's a rite of passage. So I just, as I'm thinking, and what I was taught is that if you go through all these rites of passage, you have no fear of death. You have no worry. That you actually are satisfied with everything that you've done because you've gone through all those spiritual rites of passage. So as we're winding down, Native Wellness Institute, we're here every day. I think this is day 53 power hours. I'm just like, ah! I mean, like, I just, this is my sincere heart telling you, Native Wellness Institute is just reaching out to you because we know we can all band together and make it through and come out victorious on the other side. So the NICWA, the National Institute of Child Welfare Association, is sponsoring this. The Noise Foundation is sponsoring this. And I think our ancestors are sponsoring this. So you can go to... all 53 you can see on our YouTube, Native Wellness Institute. You can see all of them on our Facebook page. And we're just talk to us, write to us. We have a lot of training online. We're doing focus groups. We're doing Lavina Louie, I just love Lavina. She's doing late night. I mean, we have so many talented people. If you want to come on, talk to us. So with that, I'm just going to say Kitakito Matsuno, that Kitsikakomim, that means I love you. I'm a board. I'm a consultant. We're kind of a circle. We're a team of Native Wellness Institute, and we just love the fact that you come and you tune in each day, and I look forward to seeing you guys in person, and we will again. But until then, we're going to be doing Native wellness types of things like today. So Kitakito Matsuno. We'll see you later. We never say goodbye. We'll see you later.